Hey, here's what we're doing. To have a second blade extend and retract on a single Proffie board, but have its own control, we need to disassociate it from the actual power button controlling it, because that controls power button controls all blades, and we can't get away from that at the moment. So we kind of need to work around that. The way it's going to work, when we turn the saber on like normal, we hit power and the blade comes on. Let's say blade 1 comes on. Technically, blade 2 is on. We're going to have black shown on the blade, so it looks off. When we press our button, in this case, it'll be the aux button, we want to turn that blade on with a wipe. That's a standard wipe kind of thing. Then when we press it again, we want it to come in, and we want the sounds to happen when it does that. And really, that's it. It's not difficult to do, but a lot of trial and error, a lot of learning, because I didn't know a lot about these new functions that are out. And I figured there had to be something that could help stave off showing a color immediately until I wanted to show it. And that's a tough thing, because up until this point, most stuff has been on timers. You could do ignition delay, but then you're whatever time you put in there, and you couldn't turn it on or off at will because it wouldn't wait for you to do another thing. So this is one way. I'm sure there's a million ways to do it. This is one way I did it. However, it does involve editing your prop file to create a new event that you can trigger this new custom thing. Effect user is an effect that you can use in a blade style, just the same way we use like this effect clash. You do a clash and it does this thing. This is the trigger for it. I made a whole video on this. I'll put a link in the description. You should watch how to use user effects. And I mean, by default, we're going to cover it here a little. We're not going to go into depth about it. Once all said and done, I mean, there's no user buttons in here to trigger it. So we got to, for now, we're just going to use effect clash when we build the style. To test, we'll just be using the clash button. But when we're done, when we copy our finished product here out in the config file, or in a temporary text file, we're going to replace all instances of effect clash with our effect user, whatever number we end up on later. Anything from 1 through 5, because those are how many are available. Okay, so that's the end result, to build a blade style that does that. Step 1 is building control for that. So the plan is to use effect sequence. You put in a list of things, in this case, colors, and colors can be replaced with layers. So you can nest things in here other than just a basic color. And then it goes through the sequence of your list one at a time, every time you do whatever's in this slot. So in this case, every time I hit clash, it goes from red to green to blue to red to green, and it just cycles through the list. If you only have 2 items in the list, then you only get 2 items as a result. It just toggles them. So a toggle, an on-off, is what we want. I want to press the aux button, and we want it to turn the blade on. And then we do it again, we want to turn it off. So this is going to be the wireframe of what we're going to build upon. And the effect sequence, instead of going red or green, I'm going to want that to simulate the extension retraction that the in-out TR standard power on, power off, this wipe, that's a wipe in, because that's what we're doing here in the in-out. But again, this is controlled by the power button. So we're going to have power already on, and then we need a thing to wipe out and wipe in that other blade. So there's a couple of steps. It's going to be building the transitions so they wipe in and wipe out. You're going to need to mask the base color that wants to show through. We need to lay black on there and make it stay there until we trigger our ignition. And then we want to do the reverse and, do the retraction. And that's set up again on a toggle. Just remember, it's 2 states. It's yes or no. It's either turning it on or turning it off. Okay. So in a prop file, I'm going to start with mine. I'm going to select all, copy. I'm going to make a new file and paste all this in here so I can feel free to edit, and I'm not messing with my actual file. And we're going to build a new case. Now, starting with, I'm going to find user. See, I already have a couple of user effects, so I've done it before to do other things. I already have some code in here that does it. And it's not like I had to make it up. This was some code that was already existing. This is the syntax for how to trigger an effect. So that's good, because then we can take that and put it in something else, change it to a different effect, and we can create a trigger for a new thing. That's what the user effects video is about. You should watch it. But that's what we're going to do here. I'm going to copy this. Okay. And I'm going to go down and make a new right here with the turn on saber muted. Since we're turning on something, I'm going to make sense to put it here. This section, we're going to add a new case. This is going to be turn second blade on / off. We're going to do it with the same button press. I want to press aux, turn it on. I want to press aux again and turn it off. So it's that toggle. It's one button. Turn second blade on off. I'll just throw in using effect user. Now I know I already have 1, 2, 3 in here. So we're going to use user effect 4 for this. You got 1 through 5. And okay, so now just like all the other cases for button events, we're going to build a new one. And this one's going to be case event ID, and the button is going to be the aux button because that's the button we want. And when the event of first held happens, not fist held, first held, that's pressing it, and 300 milliseconds later, it happens. So it's not just touching the button where you bump it and it's going to ignite your other blade, but it's not hold it for like 3 seconds or even 1 second. It's a good time, and I don't have it used. That's part of the game of building a prop file. And it's a bad example to try to show you what current the power button looks like, because I've got this here, and this is a little different. Some are saved clicks, some are not. It comes down to what have I already used, what's still available, what would interrupt something else, because it's the same button, but especially if you only have one button, it's very hard. You got to like make sure your timings don't overlap the wrong way, and it takes a lot of work. That's why I want to keep this simple. One button, one type of press is going to toggle this thing one way or the other. And we're just going to do it with a bool. It's just a true or a false case. So when we get to this point, when it senses this button happen, we're going to check, is that second blade on? If it's not, we're going to do stuff to turn it on and play the sound. And then if it's already on and we press the button and it says, oh, we pressed the button, now that the blade's on, what do you want me to do? We're going to tell it to turn it off and play the out sound. That's it. That's all we got to do. So let me go back to the actual part I'm editing and give myself some space here for now, just so I can see that I'm here. All right. This is what I copied from before. Okay. This is how you tell when the button happens, do this thing. And we don't want to do force. I'm going to do user 4. Also, I want to play the sound. And you can just, again, grabbing some code from somewhere else, you can see how stuff works. So here's an example. Play battle mode begin when this happens, when you get into battle mode. Well, this is the key. We need this syntax, and we need this. This is the template we want to follow. I'm going to copy this, and I'm pasting in this, and I'm changing it to the right sound. One last thing I left off here, I just noticed. When do we want to listen for this button? Well, when the saber's on, because the ignition is going to light our first blade, and that means our saber is on. Our blade, technically our blades are all on. So that's when we're listening. So the button case needs to include that. That makes sense, right? And then when we're done doing our stuff, which is playing our blade animation and then playing our sound, we're finished. So we just need to tell this case that it's done. And we do that by returning true. And it says this case has been satisfied. It's finished its execution of the stuff we told it to do, and we're good. Go back and listen for another button. And then it just starts looping through here again, listening for stuff to happen, basically. All right, so now let's think. Will this work? We turn our saber on, so we've got mode on. We're good there. We press the aux button, okay? And it's the first press, and we held it for 300 milliseconds. Now we're going to start doing these things. We do our blade animation, user 4. We play our ignition sound, picks a random one from the pool of outs, plays it, and then we're done. So now we've got a second blade, and it's on. And because we had it do a wipe, and we set up our color right and everything, now the blade's on. Okay, great. Now we want to turn that blade off with the same button. Well, okay, blade is on. Power is on, yep. And we get here, because we've pressed aux, we do our blade animation, which is now the second press, which is the second event in the effect sequence that we were talking about. Remember, the cycles through the colors? Well, we're toggling our other state, which is now going to be going to off, but it's going to want to play this out sound. Well, that's not right. We need this to be the in sound. So because it's a toggled thing, we need one set of commands to go from off to on, and we need the other set to go from on to off. So we're going to do that, like I said, by setting up a bool. So here's what you do. Down in the bottom of a prop file, there's an area here called private, where there's a bunch of initialized variables. And that's what we're doing here. We're going to initialize a new Boolean variable, global variable, and we're going to pick a name. I'm going to call it something logical. Second blade on. This can either be true or false. So when we first turn on that power and the main blade lights, we want our second blade to be in the state of off. And that's so is the second blade on? The answer is no, it's false. So that's how we're starting. It scans this whole file, it comes down, it initializes everything to these values. So we start off with a false statement. Okay, so remember, second blade on is equal to false when we start. So then we press our button. We need to test whether our blade is on or off, because we're going to have two cases here. So actually, I'm just going ahead and I'm going to copy this. I'm going to space this out a little bit. That's our first case. That's going from off to on. I'm going to go ahead and edit these to be right. We do want to play the blade animation again, because we're going to toggle over there, but we want to change this sound to be the in sound instead. And we got to set up these to be in their own cases. So this is how you set up an if clause. You tell this, first you indent, you say if, now what was our variable called? It was second, it was second blade, yeah, second blade on. And that's it. See, so when you see it like this in parentheses, it's checking to see if this is true. Then we're going to do stuff. So, all right, let's just go with that for a second. It gets an open brace like that. And then after the first case of stuff, which ends here, actually these get indented one. You always indent one for every case you're in. And then you come back out. See, it's lined up with the if. That's how that works. There's an if. And it's coming, so we start, it's false, right? We press our button. Is the second blade on? The answer is no. So therefore, anything inside that if does not get executed. It says, oh, it's not? All right, well, then we're moving on. It skips right to the end, closing brace, and continues code going down. Well, if the blade is not on, we're skipping this. Then the next thing we have is to play the in sound and to play our extension. That would be screwed up. We don't want that. So we need to give it an alternate option. That's when you do an else. And there's my closing brace, but that's going to get confusing because I really want this code in here. Just backing it up, just lining it up. And I'm giving myself my closing brace as well. So we're all paired up and happy. So if the blade is on, we want to turn it on. Well, that doesn't seem right either. So you got to get these straight. It's just a lot of like double negative kind of thinking. What's got to happen is we start off false. So the first thing to check, do we need to turn it on? Then false needs to be the case. So how do we make this? We can just double negative it, think of it like kind of that, and say, no, this is not true. That's how you make it not. You put a bang, an exclamation point in the front, says not second blade on, meaning second blade is off. So now we have the correct state. So we come down here, we press our aux button. It says, hey, is that second blade on? Is that second blade not on? Meaning, is it off? If the answer is yes, then we turn it on. Great. If it does the first set of instruction, it doesn't do the else. It only does the else if the thing is not true. So if it is off, it comes here and says, is this not on? Correct. Then it does this. So let's say now our second blade is on. We get here because we pressed our aux button. It says, is your second blade not on? Well, that's not true now. Now our blade is on. So we're not going to do this first set of instructions. We're going to do the alternate case, else. Okay, now we're going to play our blade animation again. But this time, because we set it up right, it's going to do a wipe in. And we're going to play our retraction sound and it goes away. That's really all this is doing. It's just one or the other, depending on which case you're in. Now, the problem is this. We initialize this at false at the bottom. We're checking if it's false here, but we need to change it back and forth from true to false, depending on what we did. So here where we turned it on, we don't want it to be false anymore now, because the next time we come around, it needs to be the opposite. So we're just going to redefine. Once we turn the blade on, this is now true. So that's part of that set of instructions now. Do the blade thing, play the out sound, and now second blade on is true. And then we go on our way, and we come back when we hit the button again. And with that in our pocket, it's true, right? It says, hey, is not the second blade on? No, second blade is on. So we skip that case, that set of instructions in the top part of the if, and we go to the alternate and the else. And we say, oh, okay, let's play the other animation, let's play the in sound, and then, because we're turning it off, it's not true anymore. So now we need to set it back to false. That's it. Now the last part of this is just taking into account other situations, other possibilities. So here we've used the aux button to turn it on and turn it off. Well, the only way we're going to turn this thing on is with the aux button. But I want to be able to turn it off with the other blade when I do the power button like normal. When the main blade goes off, I want the secondary blade to go off as well with it. So that's a different event. That's not pressing the aux button. So somewhere else, wherever we turn off the normal blade, we'll have to have a normal in-out retraction wipe that will be listening to the power button. And we'll also need to have our own custom one. So if we do it with the aux button, our custom one will show the wipe in. If we do it with the power button, then the standard in-out that listens to the power button will do the wipe. And I also have a gesture up top, twist off. This is a call to the off function. So when I twist off, checks all this stuff first. Is there a blade? Has it been at least 3 seconds since your last twist, or else I'm not going to bother with this? The answer is yes. Okay. Well, we're also not going to have our second blade on. So when this shuts off up here, we're going to set this to false. Where the regular power button turns things off, because if we don't set it to false, it's going to throw our toggle out of sync. Because the last time we touched it with the aux button, we set it to true. So if we don't do aux button again, and that's the only place we set it back to false, and we shut it off somewhere else, when we get back to that time, next time we press the button, it's still true. So it's not on. It's going to try to do extension, but it's already on. So it's like, you can't go out of sync. You got to cover all your bases. I hope that makes some sense. This is very difficult to try to put into words. Okay, so here's the other one. Turn blade off. This is the last part. I'm just taking this. Are you in not battle mode? It's making sure you're not in battle mode, because you can't turn off the blade without exiting battle mode first. It's just another condition. So anyway, there's the off, and this is where we're going to add our last Boolean flip to false. And that's it. Those are the only places it can get turned off. So that's it. You build a button, you give it a Boolean toggle so that each time you get to that event, it checks whether you're doing the turn it on bunch or you're doing the turn it off bunch. And when you do one or the other, you just flip the Boolean to the opposite so that the next time you come around, it does the other part. And then now it's false. So the next time it comes around, it does that. And then it sets it true. And that's it. That's all there is in the prop file. It sounds like a lot, but if you look back, we just added this little bit plus a line or two up in wherever the offs are, and we initialize it at the bottom. That's it. That's actually the easy part. It is and it isn't. I mean, the blade style, now that I'm done with it, all the hard work is done. Building it is not hard. Explaining why I did what I did and how I figured out to do what I did, I'm just going to explain how I did it and why it works. And that should hopefully be sufficient. And then you can figure it out. The moral of the story is OS 6 has a bunch of new stuff, including a bunch of new functions. These are elements that drive the styles with what to do. And it's kind of tough to explain. So it's very hard to explain. in a way that makes sense. So this was a lot of trial and error. I'm just going to go with that, how I figured out what to do. I'm going to start with the example style. And I'm going to remove all of the effects. Just have a base color red and an in-out layer. And I submit that. Now we've got what we expect. Turn on, turn off. This is a power button controlled in-out transition layer. It wipes out 300, it wipes in 500. Okay, controlled by the power button. What we want is to recreate those wipes. Remember, we had to get away from using the power button because that drives the main blade. We want to use our effect user 4 is what I wrote it in. So I'm going to build stuff in here using effect clash, just because the style editor doesn't have a button for user 1, user 2, 3, 4. So for now, just temporarily while I'm working in here, I'm just going to make effect clash, and then we'll test with the clash button like you're clashing. But then when everything is said and done and I copy out of here what we generate, I'm just going to replace all instances of effect clash with effect user 4. And that's what'll live in the config file and what'll drive your blade. Okay, so we need to simulate the in-out transition layers wipe effect. So that's fine. What do we do that with? You do it with a transition effect layer, and it gives you a TR concat, which is a sequence of transition color, transition color, transition color. This only has 3, but this could be a long list of those alternating back and forth. So we start with, what do I want to do? Well, we want to wipe out, kind of like we're seeing here. Certainly not that fast. Let's just make it 500 for something we can actually see, right? And we don't want to wipe in white. What we want to wipe in is the base color, which is underneath this transition effect layer, this red here, right? We're going to stick some transition effect layers in here on top of, even though it's under here, it's on top of the red. We're going to cover the red with this wipe, and that's what we're going to do. However, because we got to fake this, right? Red is going to be on in the background. As soon as we turn on the power with the main power button and the main blade does its thing, all right, our second blade is going to want to light up because now it's on. So we got to cover up this red until we're ready to show it when we do our user effect 4 with our aux button. So how do we do that? All right, well, we'll come back to hiding it or covering it up until we push our button later. Let's pretend it's been hidden well. It's great. What we need to do is make a wipeout. Well, the first thing that happens when you trigger this transition effect layer is the first transition, which is this. I'm going to make this instant, and I'm instantly going to go to black. Now, why would I do that? Well, because when we successfully do hide that red with some black to look like it's off until we're ready, triggering our aux button is going to do this transition effect immediately. So since we were in a black blade, I want to immediately paint the same thing so it's seamless. You don't know that we're in this transition effect layer yet. We're still behind the curtain here, covering everything with black. So we're going to instantly paint the whole blade black, and then we're going to wipe away the black in an outward wipe motion, revealing the red that's underneath. Let me just copy this out of here. I'll put it back in our main style. I'll paste this in. Okay. Now this is going to look weird because we aren't concealing the red yet, but you'll see we can see the wipe. Oh, and plus look, I left it on effect blast. So that's part of the problem too. So for now, again, we're just using clash because there's no user 4 button. So when I clash, there we go. It turns the whole blade black, and then it wipes away the black, revealing the red underneath again. That's what we're looking at. Great. Okay, so that's step 1. Step 2 is, for now, we're going to build the retraction wipe as well. So it's really the same format. So I'm going to paste this in here. Okay, that's identical. That's not going to help. I'm going to do a wipe in. That's the opposite direction. Now, because we're in layers, we can see both of these at the same time, even though they're layered on top of each other. If they don't cover each other, we're going to see it. They're going to trigger both at the same time. And when you trigger a wipe in and a wipe out at the same time, you get a center wipe one way or the other, in to out or out to in. And we don't want them simultaneously. Remember, we're going to build the toggle. Right. What we're going to do is we're going to wrap these two wipes in an effect sequence so we can choose from the list which one of these two we want to do. And every time we hit the button, it's going to do the other one, basically, because we only have two. So we're toggling. Effect sequences syntax is effect sequence, open bracket, and then you put in the effect you want to trigger the change in the list. So we're going to put in our effect, for now, clash. That'll be user for later. Every time we do that thing, we want to change from either doing this one or doing this one. And then when we're done with our list, which is at the end of this second item, I'm closing effect sequence. So I submit that, and now we'll see a wipe out and a wipe in, or a wipe out or a wipe in. Now I got the toggle of the wipes. So that's good, except what's wrong with this picture? Well, wipe out looks right because we're revealing the red, but a wipe in, I don't want to paint the whole blade black because it's supposed to be red. We got a red blade. We want to paint the whole blade red instantly. So now the seamless transition is to the actual color, to the base blade color. And then we want to wipe that in. And now you're not going to see it because it's still red in the background. But let's just get rid of this for a second, just for visibility. When we trigger it the second time, later when we work on concealing red, it's going to make the red go away the way it is right now. And it would do this. It would instantly turn red, and then it would wipe in. So we're retracting the blade. Now we got to work on this red showing too much. We don't want to see it until we hit clash. So how are we going to do that? In the ProffieOS folder in functions, I was looking through these functions and some of the new ones, and I saw time since effect. So that maybe is good. Maybe that'll, stay until I do an effect or something. That sounds something like that. And then I read the usage here. It's based on milliseconds since an event occurred. That doesn't fit the bill. That's not right. So I kept looking, and this is like 2 hours of reading all of these usage things. And what I ended up finding, something that I could use. This is effect increment. It's this, right? So I opened this, and here it is. And this usage, there's a couple of different ones built in. The base function is effect increment, but there's some variety, different ways that they're laid out. So I don't want a pulse. Increment with reset. Increment sounds interesting, kind of, but this wants to do a pulse and then reset it closer. Effect increment. It just gets triggered by an effect. There's a maximum value and there's an increment value. And it works just like it says it does here. I'm saying I sat here and I read a bunch of these and tried to find one that could do what I needed to do. Looking at the way this works, it increases in an increment value up until max each time you trigger the effect. Now here's the key. If it is equal, well, I wrote this in because I'll show you why. I learned the hard way. This actually just says if it's greater than max, then it returns 0. Return 0 means that's the answer to the question. That's the equation answer at the end of the day. When the function's done, it spits out a number, okay? And this thing, if it increments higher than the max number, it's going to spit out a 0. Otherwise, it's going to spit out whatever number you're up to in the increments. Let's look at how this works because it makes much more sense when you look at it. But this is what I tried. You can make an alpha layer that allows you to adjust the function of the color, which is set to its transparency, or how visible it is. Okay, this integer of 16,000, integers in this world go from 0 to the magical 32768, which is 100%. So if I make this integer the full 32768, we have a full red when you look at red. If this is only 16384, which is half, we have a half lit bright. So this is how transparent is this color. It can also be any of these functions, including a shape like a bump. How do you want to affect this color red? What do you want me to do to your red? That's what this button, that's what the function of it does. So what is the function for the red? Do you want it to be a bump? Do you want it to be only half bright? Well, let's think now, what do we want our red to do? We want it to go away or be there full. That's it. Just toggle me red on or red off. Okay, but you can't just do something simple. Like here's a case called if on. That the answer to this box, okay, what does this box return to the red depending on stuff? Well, if on, that literally means if your blade is on or off. If it's on, that's answer A, it's 0. So red is now 0, and that is why we see no red. If the blade is off, it answers with the other option, full. We were looking at the effect increment function. And what's beautiful about this is that it is triggerable by something we need different than the power button. And here's where we're going to put in our temporary effect clash, which will end up being our user 4 when we're done. And what do we want to trigger? Well, remember there's the increment thing. Let's just make this 5,000 for fun. So we are going to, every time we hit the clash button, we're going to increment the transparency level by 5,000, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30. Now, once we get to 32768, it loops around to 0. This is how I discovered that. It doesn't reset to 0. I was under the impression that once you hit the max value, it just returns 0 and we'd be back to 0. And when I hit it again, I'd be at 5. Not so much. Trial and error. Once I found this out, that's what sent me forward and said, oh, well then, okay, then I need to do something else as well. And this is why. Okay, so that's 30. We hit it again. Now we're past 0 and we're back at like 20, whatever, 5,000 minus 27, so 23. Let's jump this to a larger increment so we can kind of see what's going on. Let's say it's 20,000. Well, that's more than half. Let's just do 10,000. Right? So now we're going to start at 0. We're at 10. We're at 20. We're at 30. Now I go over. Now we're looking at it's returning 27 to 32. We went through the ceiling. We're looped back around. We're past 0 and we're back up to 27. Point is, it loops back around through 0. It doesn't necessarily land at 0. So the only way to get it to land back at 0 is to land is exactly half, so that the next one is exactly full. If you go 16,384, we start at 0, we hit it once, we're at half. Now we hit it again, and we landed on max. We landed on 32768. So it actually now equals 0. So it's the only spot you can be in here to do a two-way toggle with increments that don't loop through and leave a remainder and screw with your opacity and give you like an awkward value. Very hard to explain, but once it clicks, you kind of go, oh yeah, I get it. We just loop through with the remainder, and that's the number we landed on each time. And so half is where I need to be. Problem is, I don't want half as the final thing. See, this whole box is given red either 0 or half. Like I want a full bright braid. I want full red. So how are we going to do that? I need this to get either 0 or full 32768. So I'm only getting half out of this. Let me just do it so it explains it. The answer is something we've had all along, is less than, which now there's like a little add-on. It literally just flips it, is greater than. And all this says, okay, let's just make it an int so we can see how it works. We'll make it a regular old integer, and we're going to make it 99. So the question here is just like the if case that we did in the prop. You get to this thing, it says, is f greater than v? The answer is no. So since the answer is no, it's going to spit out a 0. So red gets 0, and look, we have 0 red. If f, I don't know how the equals is going to work. Shouldn't work because it's not true. If it's 100, it's not greater than, it's equal to. Oh, good. It's smart. Great. Math is great. So there. It's 100. It's equal. The answer is no, it is not greater than. So we're still getting 0. If this is 101, now it is true. Now it's spitting out 32768. It is spitting out, this is returning full. 32768 is the number. It is giving to the red, and the red is a full color. Great. So instead of this number, this arbitrary number we're picking out of nowhere, we're going to put a different function in here. I copied it, I'm pasting it. This is our function that is either spitting out, here, let me just submit it. Remember, we're either at 0, this returns to the thing above it, either 0 or 16,384. So if I hit clash, I go from 0 to 16,384. So is 16,384 greater than 100? Yes, it is. So then this thing will give red full when I hit clash. I hit clash again, goes up to max, which resets back to 0. So now the answer from this whole box is 0. So it returns that to this parent function. Is this f value of 0 greater than 100? No, it is not. So then this answers either 0 or full. So now this has got an answer of 0. It gives red 0. We have 0 red. And it works. That's how it works. It's a toggle within a toggle. It's a toggle within a case. I'm basically toggling a number higher than 100 and lower than 100 every time I hit clash. So that takes a very simple question of, is it greater than? I mean, this number could be any, this, you know, if we wanted to get technical, this could be 16,383, right? That would be the minimum case to still work because we're either at 16,384. I don't need that. I need this. So this being said, now look, we're done. Done. We can get out of here. Because this is our base color. Remember, we need to have a base color that responded the way we want. I'm going to copy this. I'm going back to our workspace. And the base color of red, I'm going to just paste it here. I got my comma, and I'm going to submit it. And now my power button is on, but I have no red. So when I hit clash, we get our instant painting of black to match the existing black we were seeing. The red has turned on. It wipes away the quick laid black and we see the red. Because this happens at the same time. While this is turning from black to red at the same time, instantly, while that's turning to red, this is turning to paint black. So we don't see it turn red because it's hidden by this black that's instantly there at the same time. Trumps it because it's on a higher layer. It's covering it. So we instantly show black the same time we instantly go to red. So we don't see the red until the wipe reveals it. And then we do the opposite case for when we retract. When I hit clash, the red base color instantly disappears, but we're painting the base color in instantly on top of that new black. So it looks like nothing happened until we wipe away the red that we just painted, revealing what's underneath, which is nothing because we set this up to be nothing. Now this won't work as is because we're in layers. Your very, very base layer of any blade style cannot be an alpha layer transparent color. It needs to be a solid color. So the fix is just make a black base color. Submit. Now this is where I'm gonna take this out, show you what happens. We clash, it turns on, right? If we use, we aux button, it turns it on and off. Great. Let's say we aux it on, and then we want to turn both off. So we hit power. Hello? Yeah, our second blade is still on because we did not trigger this wipe because we did not click our user button again. So it's still out there. It's waiting to wipe in. So we're not going to see this go away. So we need to put in for our second bleed, the in-out transition layer, because that listens to the power button. And for the ignition, we don't want it to do anything. We just want it to be instantly showing stuff in the background. So we're not doing any transition on the in, just turn it on, allow everything to be seen. But on the in, for the retraction, we want to mimic the same thing we have on our custom button and our twist off. Anything that's not our custom, will get covered by this. We want this to mimic the same retraction so that you can't tell us any difference about how you're turning it off. And it turns it off. And that's how this works. Now I forgot my comma. So we Clash, the blade is not powered on. Neither blade's on. We do our aux button. Second blade doesn't turn on by itself. That's just the way it is. It's just, there's always got to be a blade one. That's like, what, a caveat, workaround after all this? I mean, that's not a big deal, I don't think. We turn our aux button on, there goes our blade. We turn our aux button off, it shuts off. We turn it on, we leave it on. We turn off both blades at the same time. And because we've added in the mirror of the same retraction on either the power or the clash, we do power and it goes away. Okay, so we've made it to the finishing touches time. So we've built this second blade extension retraction on its own button on a single Proffie board. Gonna make it work. That's great. Right now we got a red blade. It's red, it's nice, and that's it. But what about all my fancy effects and stuff? There's no stuff in here. Well, here's where you put it. Just, this is your base blade color, red. So let's isolate red, right? We can replace red with any, like, here's an audio flicker, right? You can replace red with audio flicker. And now when we show our blade, we're showing our new base blade color. Problem with that, watch this. Oh, that's right, we built red into our wipe. So those two highlighted reds, these two positions both need to be your base blade color, right? So we are going to replace the base color with a fancy new OS 6. That's FET special, fantastic, full of stuff, blade style. So you want to make sure you grab the whole header there and the whole style, copy that, go to a new style editor. Okay, select all this and paste what you just copied in there. Submit it, and then click the outermost bracket here. That will turn that wall of code into some layers that we can see what's going on. And this is what I'm looking for, the in-out transition layer, because that's what we just built. We just built ourselves our extension and retraction for our second blade. So we're going to borrow, transfer everything that is, I'm just going to grab everything that's not what we already built. Okay, so that's base layers and everything. Now here's the trick. We're replacing one color, right? And that's a lot of layers. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You know what I mean? You can replace it with one layer, one color with one layer, but you can't stick a bunch of layers in a slot where only one color was, unless you zip it up into a nice little package that looks like one box. You take all these layers, you put them in one box named layers, and then you're only replacing one thing with one thing. So for one color red, you can put a layers package full of layers. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm actually going to borrow this layers here because it's already typed out for me. Go all the way down, except stopping at the line above the in out transition layer, taking everything to the end of melt, not the comma. Copy. And I'm going to highlight the thing we're replacing, but not the comma, so it's the same. Pasting. And now just keep in mind that I also borrowed that layers. So this open doesn't land until after what I'm not taking. That's all the way at the end of this style. This top layers is the first opening bracket. So that means the last opening bracket is its match. So I didn't copy the ending bracket for the layers. So I would get an error if I didn't go and add one closing bracket for the closing of those layers. Then I submit, and it has replaced red as our base layer color with essentially everything that was there. In our stuff, in the new in-out layer, is not actually going to be Clash. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take the whole kit and caboodle. Is that a thing? Copy. So now I've actually added the, wrapped it in the style pointer beginning and end. copying this out of here. This is what you would put in your config. So anything from here on is not clash. So I'm going to highlight that effect clash. Find that one, find that one, find that one. All these effect clashes simply become user for. And that's it. There's a style to copy. It's a blade style. Your second, your second blade. Oh, amazing to have this style editor, because I mean, this would be like an upload and a test, and then another upload and a test. Every value, every change, that's not going to happen. So being able to do it here is really the key to learning. I mean, this is a great place to learn how these things work. So just dive in. You're not going to break anything. I do suggest, like, when you get to this point, you got something that's working, you do want to copy it and paste it to like some text file, because this does crash. I mean, number one, it's beta, and you will lose a lot of work if you don't have it. At least, like, if you made a bunch of changes and things are working, or you kind of like where this is going, just copy it, stick it in a running log, like take a text file, and then you just know whatever's towards the bottom is the newer stuff, And I'm done rambling. Bye.